Well, happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Today's guest is another hidden treasure that I found from a summit that I watched last year. It was called the Reclaim Your Health Summit. It was hosted by Dr. Judy Bringman, who is going to be a guest on the show. She had to cancel because she had a flat tire and she was rescheduled. But I have literally had almost every guest she had on her summit on the show, and they have been just undiscovered treasures in the plant-based world. And you're going to meet another one of them today. She is a physician in San Diego. Her name is Dr. Marsha-Gail Davis, and please welcome her to the show. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Chef AJ. I just feel so thankful, grateful to actually be talking to you, because I just, I appreciate people like you who are using your platform to elevate the voices of prevention because of how important this is. Like we cannot understate how important it is for us to really start moving the conversation towards health across the country.
Yeah, well, I thank you. And I, as I mentioned before the show, are you sure you're old enough to be a doctor? You look amazing. And is that just genetics, or is it because you also want a healthy plant-based diet?
Well, I think it's a lot of things. I think it's definitely hugely a part of how I live, which is plant-based. And that's just because it makes sense to me. Like, I'm just a very logical person, so I don't like to do things that that don't make sense to me and that aren't helping me. So I learned over time that plant-based was really the way to go. And this was something I had kind of researched very early on. From middle school, I've kind of been on this path. It seems like kind of crazy, but I'll tell you kind of a little story on that. My mom, she kind of started me on this path to middle school. I've kind of been on this path. It's changing our diets when we were young. And I'm Jamaican, so I come from a Jamaican culture. And in our culture, we eat a lot of things unprocessed. That's just how we operate. And coming to the US, then you're exposed to a lot of processed foods because that's the culture here. So it influences how you live. And so that was some stuff that was kind of coming in. But she, after a while, was like, I'm not liking this. So we're gonna cut out some of this white bread, this soda, junk food, we're gonna cut that out. And she started doing that. And from that, I just got really fascinated with this process, this idea of being able to improve your health. I don't know what it did. It just kind of triggered this kind of interest in me. And so from then on, I started being kind of more interested in creating my own meals for myself. And I would like opt out of the Cheez-It and choose the apple and things like that. And so I've just kind of been on this path to trying to understand, how to achieve health because of how valuable it really is.
That's fantastic. Well, we're glad to have you on our team, because you look great. Your skin's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
So how long have you been plant-based? And was there, other than the fact that you were basically raised this way, were there any other factors that got you interested in it? A lot of times when I talk to medical doctors, it's because they read the China study, or maybe they saw forks over knives, something like that.
So I should clarify that I wasn't raised plant-based. I actually made that choice to move into that path on my own. And my family's like, come along with me. They've definitely adopted a lot of things about a plant-based diet. But that was something I kind of figured out on my own.
But I mean, what didn't mean you were raised plant-based, but you largely unprocessed, because you had mentioned you weren't eating processed food growing up. So you were already ahead of the game.
Yeah, not too much, here and there, but not to the level that is kind of the norm for American society. So yeah, I've been plant-based for 11 years now. 2011 was when I first said, officially, I'm going to move into this, because I, just as I was saying, just always interested in this. And even to the point that in college, my boyfriend at the time bought me a raw food cookbook. That can tell you like how interested I was into it. And I had a blender in my room. I would make smoothies in the morning. I was kind of doing my thing with that. But I just started to kind of tweak things in my senior year. And I would go on these like 2-month periods where I would eat vegetarian. And then I would kind of come back to whatever, was being offered in the cafeteria. And I kind of do this, off and on for a while. And then I just remember this moment where I tried to go back to eating whatever was offered. And I took up 2 pieces of chicken. I remember this very distinctly. I took up 2 pieces of chicken and I sat down to eat it. And I took 2 bites of the chicken and I just could not eat it anymore. I had essentially lost the taste for it, doing this kind of back and forth thing where I was having mostly plant-based food. and my body just got used to the plants having that as the main thing, and I just couldn't eat it anymore.
Yeah. How does this affect how you treat your patients?
Oh yeah, 100%. I am emphasis on plant-based diet is to the highest level. I'm an advocate for that. I actually frame it for my patients as, we have to understand that we've been going off track of our just our normal state. As human beings, our physiology is really dependent upon nutrition. You can't have it without the other. It's not really optional. Like nutrition is not non-negotiable. So I frame it as, this is a part of treatment for whatever issue that's going on. I totally 100% advocate nutrition as a significant part of their health.
What kind of practice do you have, and do you do telemedicine? Because every time we get a plant-based doctor on, people want to know if they can see you.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm in preventive medicine residency. I'm finishing up in the next 4.5 months. So I'm almost on my way to independently practicing. But I see patients in an obesity clinic as well as primary care clinic, and I also help with a virtual group visit weight loss program. So I'm involved in a lot of different things. And preventive medicine, people are learning more about it now because of the place that we're in with COVID, and people kind of realizing how inadequate our public health infrastructure is. You know, we've really come to terms with, I think we've come to the reality of that this is like a reckoning. Like, wow, we are so unprepared because we're not structured in the way that we're really promoting health for people, which is one of the reasons that the death toll is so high, so sadly, unfortunately high, because not only were we unprepared from like just an approach standpoint, you know, leadership standpoint, but we are unprepared with our health. And we know that the risk factors for COVID, obesity, and all the other chronic diseases. So yeah. Remind me of your question. I think I didn't
No,
answer.
I just was wondering where you practice and if people could actually come see you, but it sounds like you're not yet in private practice.
Right. So on my way. So look for me in Georgia in a couple months.
So you're leaving California?
When I'm finished, yeah, I'll be on my way to practice in Georgia.
Wow. Well, I listened to a podcast with you and you called yourself, it's a word that I've never heard before, a preventionist.
I love that word. I love that word. It's all encompassing because in a more general sense, it's someone who advocates prevention, believes in the power of prevention, which is so powerful. It's like, why break the glass? You know, if you can protect the glass from breaking, that makes sense. Versus it breaks and then you're trying to put all the pieces back together, you're never gonna get it all the way right. And also in the sense of, you have a cardiologist, you have a gastroenterologist. These are specialties that are more organ specific specialties that internists go into. I'm an internist. I'm trained as a primary care internist, but I see my specialty in preventive medicine and lifestyle medicine, which is a different skill set. You are able to actually support people in making changes that are going to help them live the life that they want to live, because that's what people actually want. No one wants to be sick. And I feel that there is this pessimism where it's like, oh, you know, patients, they do whatever they want, they'll make these decisions, and I tell them to change their behavior. There's kind of a pessimism around people changing their habits to improve their health, where people think they actually want to be sick, and that's not the case.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think anybody wants to be sick, but I also think a lot of people don't want to do what is necessary to be well and prevent illness. You know what I mean?
I hear you on that, and I think that it comes back to the culture and what is seen as normal or appropriate, or what's kind of what everyone else is doing. Because think about it, we do a lot of things that are hard, but that's the culture. You know what I mean? We'll drive hours on road trips, but that's a cultural thing. That seems really hard to drive hours on a road trip, but that's a cultural thing. We enjoy doing that, spending time with our families. But our culture doesn't value health. And that's one of the biggest issues. And it actually drives behavior in that way. And that's why I don't really like the focus on personal responsibility. I think that that's used often as a way to kind of explain where we are, explain the obesity epidemic, explain, chronic disease epidemic. And the thing about it is that it's really not that simple. And it's not factual at the end of the day, because we are social organisms. So we cannot live in a vacuum. We cannot be so independent that nothing affects us. We are always affected by our society, by our environment. That's just fact.
So tell us about the work you do with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I believe you're co-chair with something called the HEAL initiative. It's an acronym that's really cool.
Yeah, it's called Heal Initiative, which stands for Health Equity Achieved Through Lifestyle Medicine. And really the focus of this, it's a membership interest group in ACLM. And if people aren't familiar with it, American College of Lifestyle Medicine is probably the fastest growing professional medical society at this point in time, because of a good reason. And I say that because we are seeing just the impact of our healthcare system not being optimal, really not serving people, because patients want to preserve their health. Everybody actually wants to be well. It does take some effort to do that, but that's because we've kind of normalized health being a negative thing. So people see it as, oh my gosh, I have to do all these things to be healthy. If you needed a cultural thing where health was the default, people would be healthy. It's like that's what would actually happen. So we see evidence of the healthcare system not working in so many ways. The inexorbitant levels of costs with healthcare, that we're spending so much of our actual money as a country on disease is crazy. It's just ridiculous. And then the other piece is just the stress. Physicians are burnt out. Why is that? Because they actually feel like what I'm doing isn't making a difference for patients. I do all this work. I wake up every day and stuff that I do doesn't actually impact my patients. So I'm feeling like, why am I even doing this? What is the point? That's burnout. And then we see these kind of these developments of different communities with physicians who are trying to do differently. They say, I don't like this. I don't want to operate in this system. I want to help my patients. And that's where we're seeing things like American College of Lifestyle Medicine and Obesity Medicine Association, because we're trying to actually approach root causes of the chronic disease epidemic. And we're really trying to help our patients at the end of the day. So that's where we're moving.
So I actually I did attend the last conference of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and when John McDougall, he was in it and got a big award or was on a panel, and I watched a lot of the presentations, including the one you did about the racial disparities with COVID. And I wonder if you could address that, because it seems like COVID is just shining a light on what already was there in terms of racial disparities in healthcare.
Yes, and I realized I didn't finish answering your last question on heal. So essentially, when we see all this, we understand that this is a serious problem. And heal is just focused on the fact that with lifestyle, we talk so much about healthcare for all. We also need health for all. We need our healthcare system to actually care for health, and we need our health care system to provide health for all. And that's really the issue that we're seeing is health disparities is not something new. It's never been new. We've known about this since the 1980s with a report on, an equitable treatment. There's an unequal treatment actually for entities of medicine that was published. At the time that it was published, it really didn't ring an alarm. It was an alarm, but it didn't reverberate through society as we're seeing this discussion on health disparities happen now. And so because of that, we realize that it's when we put our focus on it that stuff gets done. And we've been forced to actually put a light on health disparities now because we see the grave impact of lives being lost unnecessarily as a result of us not putting in place these types of strategies that help people to actually live well. And it is not fair for a certain demographic of people to be suffering and needlessly dying more as a result of us not putting things in place and having a structure in our society that promotes. So it's really a problem. And I'm not one of those people that will be accepting of that. It's completely unacceptable. It's the way that we function as a society. And I've just never been able to accept that.
How do we fix it?
That's what we're trying to do with Heal. That's exactly what we're trying to do with Heal. Because part of the challenge is that we have to deal with this culture of health, culture of unhealth, that pushes us in the direction of the developing disease. And we also have so many structural things in place that make it difficult for various communities of color to be able to achieve health. And we see that Dr. Kadira Huff was on here. That's one of my friends. She's awesome. She did such an excellent job just talking about health for families, but also in the communities of color. And so many different things. We have areas where people don't actually have access to healthy food. And so when you say, yeah, but you can just buy healthy food and you'll be okay, Honestly, yes, that would be, that's what we know is the case. But if somebody's actual choices are limited because they don't have access to those choices, they're not in the same boat. Then they kind of become paired as apples and oranges. And that is the case for many individuals who live in food deserts and food slums, and we term that as food apartheid, which means that there's actually an infrastructure that makes it so that they don't have options to choose from. And being in environments where it's actually you have access to places where you can walk, and your environment is pleasing, that you're able to walk outside and get fresh air and all these different things, and you're in an environment that is having clean air. We know a lot of environmental racism actually puts certain um, exposures in people's environments, such as factories and other types of pollutants, factories and other types of structures that create pollutants. We see a lot of those things happening in communities of color where those things are placed. They actually build them, because of interest to have it in this particular location because they don't want it in a location that's considered more valuable. There's actually a report, not a report, it was an editorial commentary that came out in NEJM in February 21st. It was called Structural Racism. It was written by Mary Bassett, who used to be the deputy health officer, I believe, in New York City, and other authors that I can't recall their name off the top of my head, but excellent, excellent piece just talking about the roots of health disparities. And I think that summed it up very well because they went back to a lot of historical context, looking at redlining and how that actually created the underpinning or how we have such segregated areas in the US, and it led to a lot of disinvestment in communities that led to schools that weren't adequate, led to investment in food and having access to food and healthcare. It just was kind of underpinning initially with redlining that happened in 1933 as a result of the home owners loan corporation, where they essentially drew red lines around these areas that they felt weren't mortgage worthy. So there's a lot of history that goes into it, but I am at least pleased about the conversations happening in this place on a regular basis. I'm not satisfied with where we are, but we're definitely moving in the right direction, and I'm happy to see that.
Great. I don't, a couple of people in the chat saying at times you're sounding muffled. I wonder if you have a headset or maybe move the microphone a little bit closer. I'm hearing you okay, but a couple of people have commented that the sound was going in and out.
I'm gonna try to project as low as I can. Oh, I'm so
Great.
sorry. I hate
No,
that.
it's okay. It's okay. No, it's quite all right. Are you familiar with Dr. Columbus Batiste or Dr. Eric Walsh? I had them on twice last week. They have a YouTube channel called Slave Food Project because this is something they talk about a lot. And it's interesting because you mentioned there are people that don't have access to healthy food, but when you think about it, everybody has access to junk food, right? It's everywhere. Pet store, hardware store. That to me is part of the problem. I mean, of course, it's not right that they don't have access to healthy food, but why is this stuff everywhere? Like, why do we need it in a hardware store and a pet store? That makes no sense to me.
And it shows you the environmental engineering. These are very intentional decisions. Actually, part of my work with the group that I'm working with virtual group visits, I spoke to them about just supermarket design, and that the way a supermarket is designed is for you to purchase more food than you're really intended to. And that's why we tell patients don't go to the supermarket hungry, because we know that you'll fall into essentially a bit of a trap, actually a real trap, because the way that the supermarket is structured, you have all the really essential food at certain places so that you kind of have to walk through the middle aisles to get to them. And as you do that, the opportunity for you to buy food that you really don't need presents itself, and people end up coming out of the store with things that they weren't intending to purchase. And that's just part of how it's developed so that you can buy more. They want you to be able to buy more food. And that just tells us that so much about the environment is really crucial to how we behave. And that's why I really do not like the personal responsibility argument, because it's not practical. We just don't operate that way. We're always going to be influenced by our environment. And that's how I see human beings. I actually kind of think about it as this is not something revolutionary, but it's how we all think about ourselves as human beings, that we have a physical component to us, we have a mental component to us, we have a spiritual component and a social component. And all of these things have to work together. There's cross linking, you know, a body mind connection is the mental and the physical components. But essentially, marketing has a very good understanding of that, excellent understanding of that, and that influences us to such a great degree.
I love that you say we're always going to be influenced by our environment, because that's, I've been saying forever, if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. And that's why when I'm working with people that are food addicts or trying to lose weight, I'm like, you can't have it in your house. And the environment is, it's a predictor of your success. And that's, I don't like shopping at regular grocery stores with junk, you know, because I don't even like to look at it or walk by it. It's too bad that there can't be just like a grocery store that just has this only healthy stuff, only vegan stuff, only healthy stuff. Well, I guess they do. It's called farmer's market.
Exactly, I was about to say, we have a couple examples of that, you know, where at least it's better. And even in grocery stores, like, you know, you do have the options to do that. And I think that's where cultivating these new habits will help you, because you'll be better prepared when your habit is now this as your normal. Because you understand the value of what you're doing. So when you look at, oh, if I eat this whatever soft beer, I'm gonna have this soda, I'm gonna have this processed food. For you, it's no longer valuable to eat that. The kind of value proposition that you have for yourself is like, my health matters to me so much. So I will choose to eat foods that really benefit me versus ones that don't. And once you're in that mindset, the influence is going to be less powerful. It just really is, because you just don't value it. So it's like, this is nothing to me. You know, it doesn't have any effect on me because I just don't want to go down that road.
It's just so hard. That stuff is so addictive. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Moss, but he just had a new book come out. I'm hoping to interview him, called Hooked. I mean, they make the food just that we can't not eat it.
Yes, I definitely am familiar with that book. I refer to that book all the time with my patients. The picture with the Doritos and the whole concept of the bliss point, so important. And that also, again, goes back to environmental engineering and people understanding that it's not just you're losing control. There are actually very specific physiologic processes happening in your body, physiologic responses happening in your body that that promote the way that you behave. And when you understand the underpinnings, then you realize that no, I don't want to put myself in a situation where that could happen. You understand that you have to kind of create an environment around yourself that allows you to make the right decision. And that as a human being, you're vulnerable to making choices that don't serve you. And it's not like you're a bad person, it's because you're human. And once you understand that, then you'll say, okay, yeah, I'm going to put myself in the right situation for me to be able to thrive.
Have you been able to influence any of your colleagues by your way of eating? Do they notice?
I think so. You know, I'm not somebody who pushes things on people. I'll mention it a lot, like I'll be very passionate about it. And if they ask me questions, I'll go hard. I'll go hard on the responses. I'll give you information, all of that. But throughout medical school and residency, I definitely was known as kind of the healthy person, the nutrition girl. That was kind of my label. And it was really funny because colleagues they would see me and they would be eating, you know, like a burger or drinking soda or something. And they're like, Marsha-Gail, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm really trying to do better. And I'm like, listen, I'm not here to judge you. But it was just interesting to just see that dynamic, that they even felt that they had to kind of voice that. So I think people have been inspired by my own life and the way that I live. They make comments to me about, wow, that's awesome that you're doing that. And how long have you, been this way? And they're asking me questions. I wouldn't say that I have, oh, actually, yeah. So I have a cousin. In Jamaican culture, we have cousins and aunts who are just friends, like family friends, very close family friends. And they're our family. So we call them aunt and uncle and cousin. And I have my aunt and my cousins and uncle, where I stayed with them for a period of time. I was helping my cousin study for the MCAT, and she's now a resident, doing extremely well in a residency. But I ended up kind of making a deal with my aunt that while I was there for the month, I was going to change everything about what they were eating. We're going to go on like a whole different situation. We're doing plant-based diet while I'm here. And we purchased all the food together. I had recipes for them every single day. And we did a lot of different things, all different types of ways that you're going to cook plant-based foods. And while I was with them, they tried things, some things they liked, some things they didn't like. But after being with them, my cousin, who she really wasn't a fan of a lot of fruits and veggies, and that was an issue. So we already knew that. But now coming on how many years that was when I saw her, 2012, that's like almost 9 years. She's completely changed her own diet. She's not yet fully plant-based, but she has incorporated so many plant foods into how she eats. She's seen the difference in herself, and she's always like, "Thank you so much for helping me, get to this place." And she's really done most of the work for herself, but just introducing that was a big difference. And then my aunt as well, just being able to put aside some of the meat, different things, meat and fish and all of that, and she's been able to make choices that have improved her health as well. And then most recently, my other cousin, who's a brother of my cousin, he's now gone fully plant-based recently. So I've given him like a whole meal plan to continue, but it's been really cool to see just that impact from years ago has resulted in these changes in their lives. I'm very happy about that.
That's fantastic. What are traditional Jamaican foods, and has that changed at all throughout the years?
I don't think it's changed at all. Our culture is very potent. It's very vibrant. It's very rich. That's one of the most accurate words I can use to describe it. But our cultural foods are very kind of fixed, because that's like a part of how we live. But our food is definitely heavy on meat. We do have kind of a cultural community in Jamaica called the Rastafarian community that's actually plant-based. So they eat ITAL food, meaning that there's no animal products. Everything is herbs from the ground, essentially, whole, unprocessed, unaltered in any way, and all plants. So that's one kind of smaller community in Jamaica that actually eats that way. But culturally, because we live on an island and we're exposed to lots of varieties of fruits and vegetables, but mostly fruits, a lot of Jamaicans are fruit eaters and eat a lot of fruit. But there definitely is a focus on the meat, because we have curry chicken and oxtail and curry goat and fried fish and escovitch fish. And so that is a part of our culture. But I think even in Jamaican culture, I'm seeing a lot of Jamaican plant-based versions of Jamaican food coming out, because everyone's learning, that this is the way that's going to help you to live the best being plant-based.
That's great. I not all doctors agree that people should or need to be plant-based. I've never seen a doctor like promote processed food and say that that's good. So what I don't understand is, up until the pandemic, I volunteered at a hospital. I've been volunteering at a hospital for 30 years. Why is the food so bad in a hospital? And I don't mean necessarily what they give the patients, but like in the cafeteria, they've got vending machines with all kinds of crap food. A lot of hospitals even have McDonald's in the lobby.
Oh yeah.
Does anyone not realize that there's something wrong with that picture?
And I think just what you said, the realization that something's so wrong with that picture, I think that's part of this where we are right now, that the realization of just how abnormal our environment is has not come to the surface kind of as a culture, where we're in hospitals where people are literally sick because of these very foods that we provide, foods that are high in fat, foods that are unprocessed, foods that are processed, foods that are high in sugar. And that is a part of what we offer, not only to individuals who are in the hospital, even our own staff, but patients as well. I was in the process of writing an op-ed where I started off kind of describing a patient having a heart attack the day before, and in that next morning he was provided a cheeseburger and fries. And so many colleagues were like, this is not new. I've seen this happen on several occasions. And I think it is a moment for us to kind of stop and just take inventory on what's going on. How abnormal is this, that we're in a culture that health is almost viewed in a negative light? Like we see that happening where people say, oh, you're a health freak, or you're a health nut, or your plant-based diet is really strict. Health has become something that's now the minority. because as we know, chronic disease and especially obesity, majority of individuals in the US are actually overweight. And we have to really think about that we're on track to, as a society, majority of us are actually sick, and we're going to become sicker as we move forward. That is insane. We have to really look at that and say, whoa, where most of us are sick, most of us are actually living in a sick state. Something is gravely wrong with that. And I think that gets back to just the human body and how it functions, because our bodies are not our bodies don't move towards a state of illness. That's not how the human body works. The human body has two main principles that it rests on. And the first one is homeostasis. And if you look into Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine, which is like the internal medicine Bible, homeostasis is mentioned in every single chapter over 100 times. And homeostasis is this tendency towards stability. We're keeping kind of these optimal internal physical and chemical conditions is what the body is always trying to do. The other principle is this tendency towards healing. You cut yourself, the best example is if you have a bleeding injury. You cut yourself and you're already in the process of healing. Within a couple of minutes, that bleed has stopped. And it tells you what the body wants to do. It tells you the tendency of where the body wants to go. And if we see that now our default is sickness and illness, something is gravely wrong. Something is gravely wrong. And we have to really take note of that.
When did you graduate medical school?
2016.
2018?
2016.
2016, okay, so about 5 years ago. Do you remember how much nutritional training did you get?
So it's definitely not changed much. I think actually, no, I shouldn't say that. There are efforts to improve it, but when I was a student, it's like what everyone has said before, Dr. Greger and all of the lifestyle medicine pioneers and individuals who are very passionate on working lifestyle medicine now, that it just wasn't adequate. And it was very focused on nutritional deficiencies, which are not something that we see often. This is having vitamin D toxicity or scurvy. These are things that happened in like the 19th and 18th centuries, 20th century as well. But that's not a common occurrence now. The common issue that we're having is what we call overnutrition, but it really isn't, because your body's not nourished. It's positive energy balance, where you have too much energy in your body and the only need that's stored is in fat, in the form of fat in your body. So we did not have adequate training, and the training, it wasn't focused on what we're really dealing with now, which is the obesity epidemic and the chronic disease epidemic, where we're really dealing with people engaging in lifestyle habits that are maladaptive as a result of their environments really pushing them in this direction. And then as humans, we kind of just get into these cycles. So definitely inadequate, but there is hope, because with ACLM, we have efforts like the lifestyle medicine residency curriculum. Of course, we have training for practicing physicians, but you are seeing around the country this kind of effort that's moving forward. Tulane in New Orleans, they have a culinary medicine program that's embedded in their medical school. Amazing, amazing. And other places like Rutgers, I believe they have a lifestyle medicine program. You have USC Greenville that has a lifestyle medicine curriculum for their med students. Loma Linda, of course, is like, that's our mecca of lifestyle medicine. We know that. So I am hopeful that there are different areas where people are actually implementing this on the ground. And it's going to take some time for it to become the norm. But whenever we survey medical students, and I remember as a medical student, there was a survey shared asking people what they wanted to learn more in terms of nutrition, and did they think it was important? Did they want to learn more? Did they think their training was adequate? All the answers were, we need more of this. We want to be trained in this. We need help with this. And so it tells you that people actually want this, but again, what's being provided is not adequate. And our system is not providing those resources for medical students to be trained effectively in this area.
I know what you mean. So it's interesting, as a preventionist, when you think about it, usually when you go to the doctors because something's wrong, right? Fix it. I don't see people like going, well, hey, doctor, I'm coming here because I'd like to prevent obesity and diabetes and heart disease. It doesn't seem that medicine works that way right now.
Not at all. And that's the craziest part. It's we wait until people get sick to then help. That just seems so off. We wait until you have a problem to then help. So we wait until you fall into the ditch to come and save you versus covering it, covering it with a concrete, a concrete platform so you don't fall in there. And I like this kind of analogy that I've used before when I think about just how our system is structured, and that it's like we're having people walking backward right beside a cliff. And number one, they're walking backwards, so they're not seeing where they're going. They're not seeing what's happening. They're also walking right by the cliff. And while they're there, there's no fence to block them from falling over. There are no signs that say, hey, move over to this side, get away from the cliff. We don't have a guide there to say, hey guys, we're going in this line, follow me. None of that. We just have people open out there in the atmosphere, just making decisions without having some kind of instruction or guide or help. And people fall over the cliff, down into the ditch, into the valley, without any type of protection. That is what is happening. We just let patients develop disease and die unnecessarily, and develop diseases where they're suffering needlessly. And I just find that to be so abnormal, that we just allow people to literally develop disease and die without any kind of effort in trying to prevent that from happening. And what hurts me the most, honestly, Jeff AJ, is that these are families that are affected. These are people that are affected. These are 45-year-olds that pass away at an age of 45 or even younger, because of something that didn't actually have to happen. I really think about the experiences of families and how that ramification of losing somebody early by something that did not have to happen affects people, affects their families, affects their community. I think that when we think about it that way, it helps us to be more focused on what we're really trying to do.
It's funny because when I think about, the pandemic's it's almost a year now. And, a lot of people, obviously, I'm not saying it's a good thing at all, but some people actually had time to take care of their health. Different people, a lot of people, it was much more stressful, but there were people that now had an opportunity to be at home and, less commuting and in some ways less stress. And yet I don't see a lot of people that have tried to take control of their health destiny during this time, which would probably be a very important time to do so.
I think that COVID brought a lot of things to the forefront. I found it really unfortunate that in the conversation around how do we approach this pandemic, we were focusing on important things, because COVID is no joke. This is a serious, serious situation. And we were able to think about all these different mitigation solutions, social, physical distancing, hand washing, masking. Very important. We need to be doing that. Now we've developed a vaccine, and I just got my second dose 2 weeks ago, to actually help with further mitigation, that when you get a disease, you're not going to progress to a severe state of disease where your chances of mortality are increased. Very important. But the last part that we've just left undiscussed is the fact that COVID has told us that our level of our health status in the country and our level of chronic disease is such a concern, that most people that died, it's them having a risk factor that included a chronic disease and obesity. We're getting information that we're not paying attention to. And that's the problem that I'm seeing here, that the conversation throughout this past year, I have never seen kind of a significant focus or a significant conversation happening on the news or on the media, accessible to majority of the country, where we're really discussing how are we going to try to shift how we approach healthcare at this point in time. It's like COVID put a wrench in our wheel. It stopped us to say, pay attention. We need to stop and pay attention. We are not going on the right track. We are veering off, considerably off the right track. How do we get back to where we need to be? And I think it's just so unfortunate that our conversation has not been to the levels that it needs to be. And I'm glad that we are having these conversations with individuals on the podcast to try to get this word out. But I'm really interested in how to create a cultural shift around what we focus on. Because I'm a creative person, and I'm just trying to think about ways to get our public consciousness to focus on health being a priority, and not as a chore, but as just kind of a default. So I've actually worked on a couple of different creative projects that are in the works. I'm just trying to bring us around, bring our conversations around health and public health and why our health needs to be different.
Right. Here's a question from a live viewer about residency in lifestyle medicine. Debbie wants to know, is there such a thing?
There actually is. There's only one residency program currently, and that's at Loma. No, it's not a residency, it's a fellowship. So no residency program in lifestyle medicine specifically, but we have a fellowship in lifestyle medicine, and we also have a lifestyle medicine residency curriculum that is offered through American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And it's been implemented in at least 18 sites right now. I believe that they're adding another 20 or so sites in the next coming year that are going to be offering this curriculum in their residency curriculum in addition to what they already offer. So we have some things in place that are very promising.
That's great.
Oh, and I should add that at UCSD, we are one of the sites for the LMRC as well. So I'm going through that program.
Nice. So let's see. Nancy says, Dr. Davis see herself working with her local government and helping them implement tools to address and improve health inequities in the communities where she will practice?
Oh, definitely. I think being a physician advocate is so important. That is starting from building relationships with people in the community and understanding what's going on. And that's a lot of the work that I'm actually doing with Heal as a part of ACLM, where we have developed some areas of focus that we think are really important. For one, we've actually started kind of a conversation around how we can develop strategies and we can connect with HBCU just to talk about lifestyle medicine and how important it is for communities of color. So we're really trying to develop relationships with different HBCUs, just again, bringing us around this conversation and connecting us as a community of color with what we understand as historical context for why we're in this situation and how we can continue to empower our community with lifestyle medicine. The other focus has been community conversations, where I've seen a lot of this happening now. And the Sleep Project is actually an example of that, where you're bringing in different kind of expert people from different professions, and we're talking about health, and we're kind of bridging this gap where medicine and other sectors seem to be siloed, and we're not coming together and having a conversation as a community with varied focuses, where we can really come up with solutions that are going to help our patients and our community. So that's what we're trying to do with community conversations. And we're looking forward to having some panels coming up soon where we're going to talk about really important topics like food insecurity, food access, and how we begin to solve this. The other focus is on how we can optimize health equity even in lifestyle, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So in our materials, in how we approach the work that we do. We had a webinar, like you said, that you viewed, where we were discussing health disparities. And so now that's a really important part of us as an organization, that health equity is something that we operate in. And it's not just this side piece of like, oh, here's our diversity, health equity, little part. It's like, this is an integral part of how we're moving forward as an organization. So that's definitely my plan, to connect once I get on the ground and start to build relationships and get us moving forward with what we're going to really do our community.
Okay. Well, no pressure, but we expect great things from you.
Oh. Thank you, Jeffrey.
So just this is a question that the audience loves to ask every guest. What do you eat in a day? Do you exercise a lot?
Oh, yes. So I exercise every morning. And the reason why I exercise is because it makes me feel good. It's just, I cannot wait for that feeling that comes after I've exercised. I get mental clarity. I feel energy. I feel this sense of well-being that's really incomparable. And that's what actually drives me to exercise regularly. Because if I don't, my body's like, ooh, something isn't right. There's that feeling of, I'm feeling an ache here, or I just feel low in energy. My mood, is not going to be as optimal as it really can be. So exercise is so important to me. And I do lots of different types of exercises. If you follow my Instagram, I basically just show you how I live on a regular basis, because I want to kind of show, I want to express how a doctor who really values this lives it. And I live it because it's real. And I live it because it makes a difference. And that's what I want you to see. Because when you see that I take it seriously, that I incorporate it in my own life, then you'll understand why I emphasize it so much for you. So I skate, I jump rope, I do high intensity interval training, I walk. My mom kind of had us on this ritual of walking on the weekends, and we walk like 1 to 2 hours, just talking, walking and talking. And it's one of my favorite things to do with my mom is just walk and talk with her. And that's another piece of it. So dancing is another thing that I do. I go to Afrobeats class safely, physically distanced, out in the open air, and it's so much fun. And then what I eat on a regular basis. So I actually create a menu, and this is just because I love to cook. I'm a creative person, so I love to creativity in every kind of area of my life. But with cooking, I will do a lot of Buddha bowls, which is basically rice and some seasoned protein-rich source of food, either tofu or beans. Lots of different options for veggies. You could have tomatoes, you could have kale, carrots, cabbage. I do flatbreads, whole wheat flatbread, and I'll put some Veganese on there. I like Veganese. I do I do like Veganese. I'll season that. I'll put a bunch of veggies on top: tomatoes, cauliflower, mushrooms. Always sprinkle with some parsley on top. I'll do pasta. I'll do um, rice and lentils very simply. Sometimes I just do rice and beans. I do soups, lentil soups, carrot soups, salads, like hearty salads, where I'll layer it with spinach and kale, roasted potatoes. Typically, it's sweet potatoes, purple or yellow or orange. And then I'll put some greens on there with some beans, dressing. I mean, I go all out with the salads, because then it becomes hearty and you're not going to be hungry because it's satisfying.
Yeah, sweet potatoes are my favorite food in the whole world.
Yeah, I know that. I saw one of your videos on calorie density where you were kind of comparing the sizes, and I was like, should make sweet potatoes sound even better than I think they already are.
I think they're like 365 calories a pound. Like I mean, it's like, my goodness, they're just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what is your Instagram handle in case people want to follow you? And I can put that in the show notes as well.
MGD, the doc. That's it.
Nice. The preventionist, that is not is that a board certification too? Like,
yes.
That really is so new to me. I've never heard that before you.
I think that's part of the issue. I think that's really the sad part, that preventive medicine is kind of a specialty that people don't know about. And when you look at what is preventive medicine doing, it's a physician that's dedicated to disease prevention and health promotion. That's it. That should be every physician. That should be the underpinning of how we all work. You want to prevent your diseases, you want to promote your health.
I think we kind of have this whole system backwards.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And the fact that our specialist number has surpassed our primary care, and primary care is a shortage. I mean, that's a clear indication that we're definitely going, we're not on the right path with how we're caring for our citizens.
Yeah. Is there anybody that in the plant-based world that either inspired you or that you look up to that you're in?
So all of them, all of the lifestyle medicine pioneers, other lifestyle medicine physicians of color who are older than me or in my peer group. You know, you have Dr. Ornish, Dr. McDougall, Esselstein, Dr. Greger. I've been familiar with them for so long, and then more recently, I'm finding individuals like Terry Stone. She works at MedStar. She was a great person to actually interview. She does culinary medicine and has built a culinary medicine program in her practice. Dr. Baxter Montgomery, of course, Dr. Batiste is a cardiologist. Dr. Cliff Morris, who is somebody you really need to interview. I am suggesting this. I'm laughing because I'm sure he's going to be like, Marsha-Gail's offering me on this. But he's a cardiologist in Virginia who does such amazing work. And he actually has this container at the entrance of his practice. When patients come off medications, there's kind of this ritualistic walk to the container where they'll drop their empty bottles on their way out. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And he's been in practice for years, and he incorporates lifestyle medicine so heavily in his practice. He
That's
actually offers lifestyle medicine consultations with his physical physician's assistant there. She's awesome, Sheila. They're just such a great team, and everyone at his practice. That is one of the most beautiful environments I've ever been in. To just witness how he cares for people and helps them heal. It's amazing.
Is he plant-based?
Yeah. Yes, he's plant-based.
What's his name? I'd love to have him on the show.
Dr. Clifford Morris.
Morris.
Yeah, I'll give you all the information.
Oh, yeah, just because I think that is so cool. You know, like when there used to be a sign at McDonald's, like over how many billions served, and like he's having like, this is how many people are getting off their medication. That is pretty cool.
It's so cool. His whole work needs to be amplified. He's doing amazing work. And then of course, Kadira Huff, that's one of my colleagues. She's amazing, and her focus on families and just her personality, her brightness, her care for people. You can always just sense that. Judy Brangman, she's doing excellent work, especially with her Instagram presence, you know, and focusing on communities of color. So many. Dr. Denise Buglin, I believe I'm saying her name properly. She's another internist who does a lot of work with teens. She has a really great opportunity right now. It's called Wisdom Teething Her. She's very creative. She's like a really creative person. So she has this opportunity to help teens health hack, basically approaching how teens can get healthy. And she has like kind of a whole creative spin on it. And she's another one. There's so many individuals. I'm like, oh, Camille Clark, that's another colleague of mine. She has her own focus with, I think, women's health and lifestyle medicine. Yeah, so those are all the colleagues that I'm thinking of that would be great for you.
Send them all to me because they sound great. Carla wants to know where Dr. Morris practices in Virginia because she lives in Virginia.
He practices in, give me a second. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to share with you that. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, and we'll get him on the show. He sounds great.
Hopewell. No, it's not Hopewell. He actually is doing a really incredible project in Hopewell, working with the Blue Zones Initiative. But I can't think off the top of my head. I'll get that to you.
Yeah. Why are there so many plant-based doctors from that name Davis? That's what Mandy's saying. There's Dr. Garth Davis, Dr. Marsha-Gail Davis. There's Brenda Davis. There must be. Yeah. Thank you. Nancy's saying, I hope we have more and more preventionists.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's where we need to be moving, and that's really what I want is for medical students to see that this is an awesome way to go, because preventive medicine not only has this kind of clinical piece. What we say is a clinical arm of preventive medicine is lifestyle medicine, because we're implementing prevention clinically with lifestyle medicine. But the other piece is that we have a lot of training with population health, and how do we start to shift overall cultures of health, with communities and population. So my focus is always like that. I have like one foot in the clinic, one foot in the community. How do we implement interventions that are in the clinical setting that affect patients on an individual basis? And then how do we also have interventions in the community that will start to change the behavior? And I definitely think that we have lots of tools available to us with social media, with creative expression, with music and media, and individuals who we have as kind of influencers to help carry that message. I think we have opportunities to really create something awesome to change our culture of health moving forward.
Right. It just seems like, both my brothers are doctors, and it just seems that most of medical school is devoted to telling you how to treat disease instead of how to prevent disease.
Yes, absolutely. But what we see is that medical students are very powerful because they're paying for their education. So when you say, listen, I want to be trained with the tools that I need to take care of patients in this particular time. We're talking about the challenges of health at this point in time, which is chronic disease and obesity. Medical students can say, I'm paying for this money. This is the curriculum that I want. I want this to be changed. And we've seen that actually happening with some of the work that ACLM has been able to do with some of their lifestyle medicine interest groups, where some curriculums they've been able to implement lifestyle medicine into their medical curriculum. So it's a process that's happening, but I do want medical students to know, if there's anyone listening, that you as a medical student actually have a lot of power in terms of changing how your curriculum is taught when everyone can come together and say, this is what we want in our curriculum. We want this to be provided to us.
Rose says, are there any trial studies for prevention medicine?
Well, can you repeat that question, please?
Are there any trial studies for prevention medicine?
Meaning, have we looked at prevention in studies? I think that's a question. And if so, yes, we definitely have a lot of information on prevention. One of the most well-known ones is the diabetes prevention program, which is that's a program that I've worked with through my residency at this point in time. I have an awesome lady who I would say you should interview her as well. Her name is Marlena Bollinger, and she's the founder and CEO of Skinny Jean, which is one of the largest kind of distributors of the diabetes prevention program in California. They're doing excellent work building different programs in the California area and really across the country. But diabetes prevention program, we know the data is there that basically show that lifestyle interventions are even more powerful than medications in preventing the development of diabetes. So there's definitely data on that all over.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for, getting in on the forefront of this and inspiring so many other physicians to do the same.
Yep. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to speak with you today.
My pleasure. Same here. Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure getting to know you, and I look forward to hearing more from you and meeting some of the people that you mentioned today that we need to get more people to know about these people, because I didn't know about them. So just like I didn't know about you until I saw you on Dr. Bregman's Summit.
Awesome. Yes, check them out for sure. Thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for what you do. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow when my guest is Dr. Jen Hawk. And when we have her on, there's always lots of questions. So try to send them in advance so we give you a question priority. Thanks again, Dr. Davis. Take care. Bye-bye.